Alright, for this video, let's go back in time a bit. This is my vintage box. Got 4 vintage decks in here. Blue, white, stone, well, essentially Stoneblade. So Stoneforge Mystic, a couple of swords, Preordain Nemesis. This is Manaless Dredge. The old version where it's still using Dread Return. I was looking on MTD Top 8, and there's a new version of Dredge that no longer uses Dread Return or the bigger creatures. I don't think I want to shift to it. I don't think I care. I'll keep the Dread Return version because I don't play in tournaments. All my power is from China, so I can't play in any official tournaments anyway. This is Jund. It's like my friend Ren likes to say, it's just modern with Moxes. And he's right, it is just modern with Moxes, but yeah. And this deck is Sprite Dragon. Years ago, let me just set that to the side. So years ago this deck was Delver. So it had Delver of Sacreds, it had Monastery Swift Spear, and then it evolved. It evolved to a format where the Delvers are taken out for Sprite Dragon. So the deck is supposed to run 3 Sprite Dragon, 2 Dack Faydens, I forget what this is supposed to be, but it's not supposed to be Pithing Needle. This is a alteration that suits the suite of decks that actually plays against. So with Pithing Needle, I can name a fetch land, I can name Wasteland, I can name a particular sword that's going to get me, or even Batterskull. If I manage to kill the germ on Batterskull in the blue-white deck, then I can prevent my opponent from equipping it. Not that they really would have the mana to, mostly, being vintage. Also stops Liliana the Veil, stops Jace in the Mind Sculpture. Liliana is in the Jund deck. Jace is in the blue-white deck. Against Dredge, it stops Bizarre Baghdad, which is crippling. If I get it early enough, it cripples the deck. So anyway, back to this blue-red deck. It's supposed to have, as I said, 3 Sprite Dragons, 3 Dreadhorde Arcanist. Everything else is pretty much bog standard. This is a new addition I'll explain in a moment. So you've got Gush. I play Mystical Tutor instead of Merchant Scroll. I prefer to cast Mystical Tutor at the end of my opponent's turn rather than tie up 2 mana on my turn for Merchant Scroll and then have to spend the mana for whatever instant or sorcery I'm getting. And with the recent addition I've made to this deck, it's even more important that I have the mana on my turn, because spending 1 and then 3 for a Tinker is a lot better than trying to spend 5 for a Tinker. Deck has 4 Preordains, Ancestral Recall, Mental Misstep, Brainstorm, Ponder, Force of Will. It has 2 Dazes. It's supposed to only have 1. I'm running 2. Right now you're seeing a Hydroblast. I have 2 Hydroblast. They could be Pyroblast. It just depends on what deck I'm going to play against. Against Dredge and blue-white, this is a dead card. Against Jund, it does some damage. Alright, so what was the problem I was having with this deck? The problem was, with only 3 Sprite Dragons, I kept running into situations where I wouldn't draw one early enough, even with Preordain after Ponder, after Preordain, after Ancestral Recall. Sometimes I really had to dig deep to find one, and by then I've used up a lot of my cheap spells that would make him bigger, and at that point maybe I've had to use a counter spell for something else, so I couldn't protect him, and he gets bolted, he gets swords, he gets killed. So without having any big creatures from the start, and without being able to find one readily, the deck was just getting steamrolled. It was just weak. To mitigate this, I put in 4 Sprite Dragons and 2 Dreadhorde Arcanists, and that worked better. I was able to more reliably get a Sprite Dragon in play, get it down, get it going. The problem was I still didn't have a big threat. I still had to pump up the small threat and push through removal, push through some counter magic, build him up to be a threat quickly enough, especially if something like Dredge, to matter in the game. So I went back to MTG Top 8 and I started looking at other decks because I wanted to keep the shell. I like Sprite Dragon. I like the shell of the deck. I already have all the cards. I don't want to be getting too many new cards. And I came across this lad that he put green in the deck. Okay, and the only green cards he put in 2 Oko Thief of Crowns. So I went ahead and bought 2 foil Okos because the price has really fallen. And they're cool, and they really did a lot with this deck. So 2 Okos. Mox Emeralds. Now I have 3 Moxes instead of just the Sapphire and the Ruby. Again, all Chinese, so don't get crazy over, oh my god, that's a lot of money. Nope, it ain't that much money. This Rainforest is worth more than all these Moxes in the deck combined. So another thing I did is I took out 1 Dack Fayden. That was part of the suite for a Hullbreacher. In the MTG Top 8, and I'll put the link to the deck list that I used as a guide. So this is supposed to be Collector Oof. The thing is, against the other decks I have, against Dredge, Collector Oof does nothing. He's just a speed bump. Against Jund, he can stop Skull Clamp from equipping, but if it's already equipped, they can still draw the cards. Against Stoneblade, True Name, whatever the hell I'm going to call that blue-white deck, it can stop Sword of Fire and Ice, and it can stop Batterskull. So, and of course, with blue-red, with Jund, and blue-white, it turns off the Moxes and Black Lotus, Collector Oof, because the activated abilities cannot be activated. So that hurts me quite a bit. And I got to think, okay, all the decks are drawing a lot of cards. Blue-white, basically the shell is the same. Gitaxian Probe, Force of Will, Gush, Mystical Tutor, Preordain, Ponder, Brainstorm, all that stuff, pretty much in the same numbers, is in the blue-white deck. So they're drawing a lot of cards. Jund, they have less ways to draw cards because this does nothing against Dark Confidant, because you reveal the card, put it in your hand, and then you draw your card for your turn. So he does nothing to top that, but he will stop the Skull Clamp cards, and he will stop the Sylvan Library cards. I put a Sylvan Library in the Jund deck just for fun, and it works pretty good. I quite like it in there. So that's why I went with Hullbreacher instead of Collector Oof. And then playing the deck, testing it out, it was still missing something. I mean, Oko really pushed it forward, but I still wasn't quite happy with it. So the latest change is I go down to 3 Sprite Dragons. There are 3 in the deck now. 3 bolts, so 3 bolts in the deck. I still stay with only 2 Dreadhorde Arcanist, because something else I experimented with was I had a Murktide Regent there for a little while. And with Murktide Regent, with Treasure Cruise, and with Dig Through Time, I've got 3 cards vying for my graveyard. And if I'm not feeling it fast enough, I'll maybe get off 1 or 2 of them, and then the next one I have to pump a lot of mana into because I simply don't have the cards to dredge. I simply haven't been able to cast so many spells, or there's things I want to retain so I can attack with Dreadhorde Arcanist and recast them. So I took out the Murktide Regent, left Dig Through Time, left Treasure Cruise, thinking of maybe altering it further, but right now with 2 cards vying to eat the graveyard, in addition to the Dreadhorde Arcanist that kind of nibble at it, I think that's sufficient. So what I did, instead of Lightning Bolt, Tinker. Instead of that Sprite Dragon, Blightsteel Colossus. In the deck that I used to get the inspiration for this, he's using Sphinx of the Steel Wind. I don't have a copy, so to crash it, I decided to go ahead and use what I had, and I had taken Jorah apart, so Blightsteel Colossus is available. The advantages are indestructible and trample, and one-shot kill with infect if they don't have sufficient blockers. Disadvantages are no vigilance and no lifelink. So Sphinx of the Steel Wind has vigilance and lifelink, so I can use it to protect myself as well as cause swings in the life total. But Sphinx of the Steel Wind can be destroyed, can be hit by what is it? What does white have to destroy artifacts? Come on. Get to it. Yeah, fragmentize. Oh, it seems to okay, so fine. Sphinx Steel Wind cannot be fragmentized. Okay, good to know. Maybe I'll change it up. Maybe I will put Sphinx the Steel Wind. But anyway, I was playing it last night, and the deck feels a lot better with that Tinker. The other thing about Sphinx of the Steel Wind, if I actually draw it, the only way I have of putting it back into the library is Brainstorm. With Blightsteel Colossus, I have Dack Fayden. I can discard it, and then it gets shuffled back in. With Brainstorm, I can put it back in, and there's another method I was thinking of that allows me to get it back into my library in order to tinker it out. So target player draws 2 cards and discards 2 cards. When I'm holding Blightsteel Colossus, I discard that, gets shuffled back in. Let's see, what else was there? Brainstorm, draw 2 cards, put 2 cards. So one of the 2 cards would be Blightsteel Colossus if I've drawn into him. Maybe that's it. Maybe that is the only 2 ways. Yeah, that is the only 2 ways I have, other than just ending the turn with 8 cards and discarding it, to put Blightsteel Colossus back in. So let's pause it there and shuffle it up and see what happens.